Welcome to my review of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne. This is the second game I've played in my quest to play most of the mainline SMT games. The first one I decided to jump into was SMT2 for some reason. The reason why I started playing these games was because I've always been a fan of the Persona series, and I wanted to at least play the series that it came from. Luckily for me, Nocturne seems to be the progenitor of all PlayStation 2 Shin Megami Tensei games, since it seems like they used just variants of the same engine to make just multiple games on the same console. Mechanically, this shouldn't be as jarring as me jumping into Shin Megami Tensei 2. So, what do I think of the game? Let's find out. The standard version of Nocturne was released in Japan on February 20th, 2003. And just like most games do, Shin Megami Tensei 3 was released, or the base version of the game was released with a special edition. The special edition for the standard version came with an incense burner that had different, just like the game, where you can burn incense to raise your stats and stuff. So they had different colored incenses to kind of give you that feel. And the burner itself was modeled after the Amala cylinder teleporter thing that you frequently have to use to save your game and teleport around and stuff. The special edition also comes with the soundtrack of the game. I found an rpgamer Japan article that states, Atlus will release Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne on February 20th at 2,800 yen or $108 for the swanky deluxe edition, and 7,800 yen, which is $66 for the regular loser version. But unfortunately for them, they all got the loser version of the game until Maniacs released a year later. Well, now since we're talking about the Maniacs edition, it released on January 29th of 2004. This version of the game is the one that got localized, and it's the one that most of the world knows today. It has Dante and the other features that were cut from the original game, like the fleshed out Labyrinth of Amala. In PAL regions, the game was released under the name Lucifer's Call. A physical copy of this game is still pretty widely available and easy to find. And also you can pick this game up on the PS3 store. I couldn't find it on the PS4 store, so good luck on that. 4 years later, Nocturne is released once again in October 23rd, 2008. This was supposed to be part of a limited edition promotional kind of thing when they released the second Raito Kuzunoha game. The game remains almost completely unchanged from the Maniacs edition, except for Dante is replaced now by Raito, and there's different cutscenes to now custom that. This version was called Maniacs Chronicle Edition to differentiate itself from just the normal Maniacs edition. The only official release of this game is in Japan, but in 2017, almost 10 years later, someone named, excuse me if I get your name wrong, Krisan Thyme made an English patch for the game that lets English players experience the game with Raito now. I'll put a link to his like Twitter down below, and also this is the same guy who made the Yosuke 420 mod, so I'll put a little bit of that gem on screen right now.
Oh, you totally fucked with my head high when you walked into me, dude! Okay, forget about that gnarly shit. Smoke it up! Let's fucking do this! Bummer, man! I am just like in a total state of mind fuckedness at the universe right now, Nintendo! Dude!
The version I'm currently playing, or the version I played, is the English patch of Maniac's Chronicles. For whatever reason, I decided to go with that version of the game. I don't know, Raito kind of just looked cooler, in my opinion. I mean, I like Dante. Dante's really fucking cool, but like, I think Raito's also cool, so, I don't know. And well, what did I think of the game? We'll find out. But, spoiler warning, I highly fucking recommend this game if it even looks slightly interesting to you. Graphically, this game still holds up very well. The art of Kazuma Kaneko translates well into 3D models and environments. His art style has a very distinctive, dark look. A lot of people like to say it's like the black lipstick and the mascara. Like, I wouldn't say mascara, but just like, it's kind of just like that look he kind of has. But I think it really suits just the world of Nocturne a lot with how dark and gritty it is. And a thing I really like about a lot about this game is it chooses to have a lot of its visuals, or most of its visuals, if not all of them, in engine. They don't resort to a lot of cutscenes or or FMVs or whatever. Kazuma Kaneko's art style really translates well into 3D models and just looks really stylish, I guess. It makes the game stand out compared to like a lot of other PS2 games. The dark and gritty pseudo anime style really suits the game well. And I'll throw on some of like the concept art images or promotional art images, but they look phenomenally well. So on native hardware, this game looks kind of blurry, and by native hardware I mean just like the base PS2 hardware. This game can look kind of blurry in like for modern standards. However, if you play it on an emulator, you can up the resolution to whatever your computer can run, and the game can look very, very good. Like even for like modern standards, the game can look pretty like decently good. So even though I just said all those really good things about the graphics of this game, I think there's one huge flaw that kind of drags down most of it, and that's the reuse of the tunnel texture. It's a similar problem to what the second game had, but I feel like it's kind of amplified to a huge extent in this game, because there's a lot of tunnels you have to go through, and a lot of them are just huge sprawling mazes, and they either have like darkness or like other kinds of like annoying shit you have to go through, to where it's just like if you don't have a demon with light, or you don't have, or lightoma or whatever, or like you don't have what you need to get through the area, it's annoying. Now, in terms of gameplay, this is the first SMT, I believe. Maybe there's one before this, but as far as I know, this is the first one to use the press turn system. You should be familiar with this system if you played any of these buggers. Things like Digital's Devil Saga, Persona 5, Persona 4, and 3 all use variations of the press turn system. However, if you've not played those games, I'll give you a basic rundown of the system. Essentially, what you're trying to do is you're trying to hit the enemy for their weakness or getting a critical on them to get an extra turn. In Nocturne, it's an extra half turn, but in other games, it's an extra turn or a move, or you can like knock them down or whatever, and it kind of varies between games. So since Nocturne is the first game with this battle system, it kind of is a little basic, but I still think it gets the job done. Essentially, you get a turn for every party member you have in like the party, so you can have up to 4 turns, and then if you hit the enemy for their weakness or get a critical, you can get an extra half turn, which you can use like a full turn, but the enemy can do the same thing to you. So it's kind of a game of like reducing the amount of turns the enemy gets and trying to maximize the amount of turns you get. The fast-paced, hard yet rewarding battle system lends itself well to the demon collecting aspect of the game, because it incentivizes the player to experiment with lots of different demons to achieve the most amount of turns in any given situation. Unlike Pokemon, the creatures you collect are not supposed to be your friend. Once a demon has learned all of its skills and is becoming increasingly less useful, fuse it for a better demon. There are obvious exceptions to this though. There are 3 different types of fusion in this game, and all 3 of them are pretty straightforward. Firstly, you have the basic 2-demon fusion, which you can fuse 2 demons to make a possibly stronger demon, or sometimes it will result in an accident which can create just a random demon in general. And then on full moons, you have what's called a sacrifice fusion, which lets you, or sacrificial fusion or whatever, it lets you, along with using the first 2 demons to fuse into another one, it lets you sacrifice a third one to either inherit its skills or like stats or whatever. Sometimes this results in like a different demon than than what's normally like supposed to be given, like if it's like a special kind of fusion or whatever, but that's kind of rare and doesn't really happen that much. And finally, you have the Death Stone fusion, which on certain phases of the moon / Kagasuchi, it lets you summon fiends, which are optional bosses that you can face when you're trying to achieve the true demon ending, but it lets you fuse them and let them be a part of your party. However, this requires a Death Stone to do so, so if you have 0 Death Stones, then you can't fuse it. A mechanic in this game that I thought was really cool was the Magitama. It's, the spike that's sticking out the back of your neck. And essentially what your neck spike does for you is it changes your elemental resistances and your weaknesses. There are like 30 different neck spikes and then 1 super neck spike, so good luck on collecting them all. Getting most of these are pretty easy. The Magitama that really like sticks out in my mind is the one you get from the Puzzle Boy in Akuza, I think, I think it's in Akuza. But god damn, they're expecting you to fucking marathon through 20 fucking puzzles. Like 10 of them were like pretty easy, to be fair, but then like by puzzle 13 I couldn't do it anymore. I had to look up a guide. I literally could not continue any farther in the game unless I wanted to lose all the progress in this like puzzles or whatever. And I already spent so much time working on them, I didn't want to have to do it again. So if you played the game before, comment below on which puzzle you got stuck on. I got stuck on fucking, puzzle 13, I think. Speaking about puzzles in Nocturne, most of them are pretty meh. A lot of them don't require that much thinking to do, and most of them, in my opinion, are just trial and error, which are the least fun type of puzzles. For the puzzles that are unique, like in the area, like per area, and don't show up like anywhere else in the game, those are all right. Like the one in the prison, I actually thought that was a pretty fun puzzle. But I thought like any of the puzzles that had to deal with you running through corridors and teleporting to another random corridor just to be teleported to another random corridor, and like this kind of like clusterfuck maze, isn't that fun. Like I guess it's so you can make some kind of map on your own or whatever, but I really just do not like those types of puzzles because they do not create like an aha moment for the player. By the time you're all the way at the end of the game, like to the final area, the Tower of Kagasuchi, at least I was like, fuck these puzzles, I'm looking up a walkthrough, I'm tired. So even though the puzzles aren't that great in this game, at least they don't, in my opinion, completely drag it down. Because you can at least look through a walkthrough and just, get through the puzzles easily without, any kind of like bullshit. The thing that really drags this game down is the encounter rate. It's pretty bad. Like, it's as bad as those old RPGs in like the Super Nintendo or like even before. I don't even think the encounter rate was as bad as in Shin Megami Tensei 2. Like, I felt like I was every 20 steps there was an encounter or whatever, if I wasn't using freaking Estoma or some kind of like repulse bell. In some areas it becomes a slog because you're just taking a couple steps and then encounter, or you're like doing a puzzle and you're trying to get something done and then you're just in another encounter again. Even with a repel or an Estoma or whatever, it's still pretty awful. Like, your 20 steps, your 10 to 20 steps is now changed from a 15 to 30 steps. You're gonna get an encounter. Obviously I'm exaggerating, but that's just kind of how it feels when you're playing the game. Nocturne is a game that's famous for its difficulty. However, I do not think this game is as difficult as everyone online makes it out to be. The difficulty of a game should be there to service a game, not to be its main draw. Luckily for SMT3, The difficulty services the game well, in my opinion. I think it really reinforces the brutal atmosphere the world's trying to convey to you. Moving on to story. The story of this game, in my opinion, is pretty lackluster. The story of a video game, at least in my opinion, or, I mean, I'm not a professional, critic or whatever. A story of a video game should make you interested in playing the game more or give you motivation to continue playing the game. However, Nocturne does not give you that, in the sense that most of its cutscenes or most of its actual important story bits are very few and far in between, giving the player little motivation to do anything. It also doesn't help that the recurring characters of this game don't really even seem like characters, and more of just vessels for their philosophies per se, or their reason. And I think that kind of hurts the game, because I was rarely ever oh boy, I want to see this character again. The only exception to that being Dante or Rido, because I don't know if you know, but they're pretty fucking awesome. And now that I'm talking about them, I might as well say it. In my opinion, the Dante / Rido parts, in my opinion, are really big highlights. The first time you fight them is really cool. The second fight and the chase scene through the labyrinth is fucking phenomenal. I was actually pretty spooked when I went back through one of the doors and I saw Rido through the glass panel, and I was like, oh fuck. And his theme was playing and everything. And then what I really like is the whole when he they join you is fucking just unbelievably cool. It just really sucks that once they join you, they kind of stop mattering at all in the story. They don't even say anything at all. So yeah. But, I mean, you get to have them in your party for the rest of the game, so, I mean, that's kind of a worth it trade-off in my opinion. And they are really good characters, or demons to use, or whatever. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rido is slightly better than Dante, due to, one of his abilities called the Aeon or whatever, but it grants him, Pierce and plus 50%, physical damage, and he's such a fucking, monster in terms of damage. And sure, all the animations are fan servicey as hell, but I mean, come on, it's fucking cool to taunt and see Goku show up on your head, or fucking Rido's head, or Dante do a showtime or whatever. Those are fucking awesome animations. I think my favorite animation out of them all is Rido's Yoshine. Just the weight behind those hits, I can feel it. I'll probably never get sick of that animation. This game does feature multiple endings depending on which reason or philosophy you decide to choose. For me, I chose the True Demon ending, which requires you to go through or to complete the entirety of the Labyrinth of Amala, and then at the end fight the true final boss, which is an awesome fight. That is such a fucking cool fight. Especially because every review or everything I've ever seen about Nocturne didn't ever spoil it or anything. It was just completely after I beat the final boss, I was like, oh, well, I guess that's it, and then there it happened. So I'm not gonna spoil anything or say anything about it, so I'll just leave it at that. Now, objectively, in my opinion, I think the best ending of the game is the True Demon ending, because it's the most fleshed out ending and you get the most content. However, if you want to choose one of the other reasons or whatever, the only once you beat the final boss or whatever, you essentially get 3 or 4 paragraphs, or I wouldn't even say paragraphs, maybe lines about just how your reason has changed the world, and then that's that. You just have to use your imagination and what else happened. Last but not least, or at least I'm pretty sure, is the soundtrack. So this game's soundtrack, I'd say, is pretty fucking awesome. I think it captures the feel of this game well. Everything is so primal and brutal, especially the yelling and screaming kind of fierce battle theme and some of the other stuff. It can kind of get repetitive, but the music always made me really pumped up the fight, so I think it did its job well. The soundtrack also has a lot of callbacks to Shin Megami Tensei 2 and other previous entries and like spin-offs and stuff. I really like how the labyrinth or the Amala Temple looks like the Tokyo Millennium Complex. Like, I mean, I might play like the beginning thing of Shin Megami Tensei 2, but like those pyramids look really similar, and the music that plays, like the battle music, sounds like pretty similar to like a Super Nintendo Shin Megami Tensei game. In conclusion, Nocturne is a game that is certainly playable today, and I would recommend to almost anybody who's looking to get into the mainline SMT like series. I think it's a better starting off point than the second game was. I think Persona, in my opinion, is a better starting point in general, especially Persona 5 since it's more modern in mechanics. However, this game is, I think, a good starting point for people who are wanting to jump back or go back into the like previous entries. Almost everything about this game still holds up pretty well, and there isn't really too much that detracts from it. So the next game I'm going to be playing is Soul Hackers, and then after that I might jump into the Raito Kuzunoha games or Shin Megami Tensei 4, depending on how I feel. Actually, I'll leave it as a vote down in my description. If you want to see which game I play next or whatever, or choose which one I play next, then that's that. Otherwise, I just want to extend thanks to all the people who've watched and commented on my last review and some of my other videos. Thank you for sticking to the end of this one, and if you want to see more, I'm sure you know how. I'll see you next time.